Hello, hello. Good morning. Can you guys hear me? All right. Who's in the chat? Can you guys hear me? Can you guys see me? I think we are live. Yeah. According to this. Just want to double check. Perfect. All right. Hi, Diana. Hey, Pancho. How's everyone going today? All right. It's freezing today here in Melbourne. All right, so I think I have everything ready. The chat is up. Am I gonna have to turn the thumbnail off? All good. All right, so I think we are ready to start. Cool. So for the past 2 weeks, I think we missed a couple of live streams. That's because I was in the middle of planning and structuring and actually delivering a workshop called the ZBrush for Illustrators workshop. We just finished that, and it went really well. I think everyone had a really good time. I personally really enjoyed it, but that was kind of like the reason why I couldn't do the streams in the past weeks. So we're gonna basically start where we left off 3 weeks ago with this guy, Sibo Tuki. That's the name given by all the suggestions in the chat in the past couple of streams. So let me bring in the polypaint just to give you an idea where we are at with this guy. So I believe in the last stream that we did about this guy, we worked on the pads. So these bits, as well as this box, this kind of like control box, and the tubes. So the idea with the polypaint being that the green one is ready to go. It's just a matter of, if I want to take this any further, like UVs and texture and all that, this one is ready to start with that part. The blue one is it has a good topology, but it hasn't been detailed, or it doesn't have a subdivision level or anything like that. So if I select this strap, for example, go into solo mode, you'll see the topology is decent. It's just what I need for this character, but it hasn't been detailed or anything. It's currently using dynamic subdivision. You guys cannot see it. Oh yeah, you can actually see if you look just behind my camera, right here below my name, there's a button called dynamic. That's where I have my dynamic subdivision toggling in on and off. So that's what I currently have, right? So that's why it's blue, because I haven't detailed it. The rest, which is gray, those assets are still at a very primitive stage, like almost blocking. So they could be, they can change a little bit more throughout the design process. That's not to say that the other ones are just set in stone. I can just change it if I need to. But let's say the head is still a dynamish object. We haven't moved into those. So I'm hoping to maybe get to this one and do the reprojection. I don't want this guy or this project to drag for too long. But what I did was, let me bring in Photoshop. So I did a quick test on where we can go from here, just because I wanted to add a bit more of that Star Wars universe type of thing, or almost post-apocalyptic world in a way, kind of like a mix between Mad Max and the scavengers in Star Wars. So what I thought we could do today, and hopefully we'd have time, is to build a quick bag or some kind of like, I don't know what this could be, just somewhere for this guy to put some elements and some stuff, and that's what he's carrying. And the other one is this set of goggles, which I think could help with the design. So these goggles might help to move away from that cuteness a little bit. So we'll see how that go. But that's the idea. So that's what I have for you guys today. So let's get started. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll address them as I see them coming. All right. So I think I'm gonna start with the with a handbag of that that thing that I just showed you on that is currently hanging from this strap, and that's going to be rather simple. We're going to use CModeler for that. I might just actually work on a different tool and then just append it, so it's going to be easier. So this is going to be a lot of CModeler. I'm going to create a Q-cube, make sure it's Polymesh 3D, turn on Polyframe on, and I'm going to click on the Q-cube, which for you guys should be under the Initialize palette on the tool palette. Just click on Q-cube and you'll get that. So this is going to be the base for it, and as always I'm just going to start simple. I'm going to start enabling symmetry on the x-axis, and I'm just going to give it the shape that I need, like the block out. I think that would be good. I'm going to try to do a long one, or slightly wider one. Alright, so that should be a good starting point. Alright, so now I'm going to duplicate this just so that I don't mess with this kind of like original shape, and I'll tell you why in a second. I'm going to hide that one, and I'm just going to create the kind of like the empty hole for this. So for that, or like where the actual assets would be inside. So I'm going to bring in my CModeler BZM. So that's the CModeler, and because I have symmetry, it's going to be pretty easy to just right click on an edge, make sure I have insert on, click and drag, and this will determine kind of like the thickness of that bag. And I'm going to do the same thing around here. Doesn't have to be too precise. I'm going to deform this quite a bit. It's not going to be a hard surface object, and I think that's fine. I'm going to add a new edge loop there, and the thinking behind it is once I subdivide this area would be a bit sharper than the one at the bottom. So if I enable dynamic, you see roughly what that edge is doing, sort of like pushing these points up, or adding more points rather, and it creates a sharper version there. But you know, this is just the starting point. Alright, so now to add the hole, I'm just gonna tag these polygons and push them down. Not all the way down, because I have QMesh. If I go all the way down, I'm gonna basically bridge it with the ones underneath. So I'm just gonna make sure it's somewhere around there, maybe a little bit more. If you don't want this to snap, you can alternatively go ahead and undo that. You can use the extrude version, which won't have the snapping option. So I'm just gonna do something like that. Make sure it's not going on the other side, and also I can just hold Control and Shift and just check. So it's not all the way down. I can move it slightly a little bit, but I'm happy with that. You won't be able to see that anyway. Alright, so if I enable dynamic, this is what I get. I'm gonna go ahead and add another edge loop around here in the inside, around there. Cool. So that's really that's really all there is to it. So that's the base. Now for the cover, the area that goes on top, kind of like the lid of the bag, I'm going to use the duplicate that I made. That's why I separated it, and I'm just going to use these polygons, maybe this one as well, right? And I'm going to hold Control. I'm going to first of all, I'm going to click on QMesh, click and drag, and this is the normal action of the QMesh, but I'm going to hold Control without letting go of the click, and that will extract those meshes. So I'm going to do something like that, and now this is actually a separate geometry, but it's very, very close to the original, right? So what I can do is go to auto groups, so that way Series is going to group whatever is not, there's no continuity in the topology, so it's going to group those separate pieces, and I can go ahead and hold Control and Shift, hide this inverted, and now I can delete hidden, and I'm going to enable double so that you can see behind. So this is going to be the basis for that lid, right? So hopefully you see where I'm going. What I'll do now is, with the Q mesh selected, I'm going to make sure polygroup all is selected, since the entire lead now is a single polygroup, and I can go ahead and click and push this one like so. All right, so now it is just a matter of tweaking the shape a little bit, so I can hold control from this angle to mask these points, invert that, bring in the gizmo, push that up. Do the same thing here. And I'm going to start moving away from that sort of very precise shape. I'm going to go for something obviously more organic. So this is just masking points and moving them, like so. Of course, I think this one should be slightly larger. Okay, so that's the blocking done, right? So now all we have to do is work on the maybe adding geometry and do a little bit of sculpting and using the normal tools for sculpting to tweak it. So let's see if we have any comments on the chat. I'm trying to learn anatomy. Do you have any good anatomy courses in the ZBrush that you could recommend me? I personally don't have any tutorials on anatomy per se, like just about anatomy. If you want to learn anatomy, I would recommend just go back to basics in terms of there's like books that will really help you. I'm not an expert in anatomy. Every time, like, it's a constant learning thing for me. So every time that I need to focus on anatomy, I go back to the books and research again. I have I'll say enough knowledge to convey my idea and to know how the anatomy works in a way, very at a very basic level, I would say. But then it's all about the power of observation. So if you take anything as a reference and then you really study it and learn how it works, that's gonna go a long way. In terms of courses, I think there's one from there's one from Rafa Grassetti, which is awesome. So you can start there. Otherwise, again, for me, it's more about like the books and learning more the theory and the foundation of it, rather than a course that shows the step by step, if that makes sense. So in that regards, there's the Anatomy for Sculptures, Anatomy for Sculptures, which is a really good book. And I should have it somewhere close by. Right, so this is the one. Right, Anatomy for Sculptures is a really good one. It just simplifies the volumes and is focused on the volumes and the way that it works, and simplifying the shapes like blockings. There's this another one, really good one, but it's more about expressions, face. It's called Anatomy of the Human Head, or the Artist's Guide to the Anatomy of the Human Head. Other than that, I would say like the old masters are the perfect go to learn anatomy. Anyway, we moved away a little bit from the topic, so let's go back to this. All right, so if I go ahead and enable dynamic in all of those pieces, we still get something pretty blocky, right? So what I want to do is make sure that the thickness and the borders are right. And then we can start like sculpting, okay? Mr. Sanson, no, it's the same project. We're still working on this guy. We're just working on the back for the guy. All right, so I'm gonna right click on insert. So, oops, this edge here, this edge loop, is gonna give me that that sharpness around the edge. I'm gonna do the same thing around here. And we can go ahead and just subdivide this. but it's just easy to do to work with the dynamic subdivision so you can see a preview of what's happening. I'm going to right click on this edge. I'm going to go to bevel, edge loop complete, click and drag, and that just gonna give me that bevel, which is exactly what I want. I might also bevel this one just to give it a bit more geometry, and then the one right in the middle, and I can even just bevel this a couple more times. So basically what I just did there is just generate a few more loops of geometry, and those loops will generate obviously more polygons and more resolution for me to later on to tweak it a little bit or change the form, the shape a bit. So insert, I'm gonna do one more here. Oops. Hang on. Sometimes inserting loops in a very low res with dynamic on might be problematic. Okay, so this is how it's looking. I'm actually going to do a tiny little bevel here as well. Cool. So if I enable dynamic, turn off polyframe, this is how it's looking. Gonna do the same thing for this one. So let's go ahead and do it from the center, and then add a couple more here. Oops. And another one there, and another one there. I think that should be enough. We might need to add one in the center, not in the center, sorry, in the inside. So insert and right click, bevel. All right, I'm gonna just give it a polygroup. All right, so now we have two separate pieces and just two simple polygroups, nothing else. Now the next thing, let's just judge how everything looks with dynamic, is to apply the dynamic subdivision and then continue working on maybe some additional details, but this as a starting point is pretty good. Hey Comics Legend, yeah, ZBrush is alive. I think ZModel is a great tool, but needs shortcuts to be really fast. Don't you agree? I'm actually faster now that I just know sort of like what to look for. So if you just right click or press spacebar, all the shortcuts are here. Sometimes if you try to find something like an action or a target that you don't use constantly, it might be just a little bit of, oh, where is this action, right? But if you use them constantly, it's just gonna be I don't know, I found it to be really easy, and I don't have to learn a lot of the shortcuts. In fact, a lot of the shortcuts that I know about ZBrush or about my interface, because I customized it, are just for the brushes. So the only ones that I really know are like how to bring in, for example, the standard brush, BST. So I learned how to bring that one really quickly, or BMV for move, or BZM for ZModel, that sort of thing. But for the rest, it's just, you know, buttons that I have in the UI and custom UIs or custom palettes with the elements. So I don't really remember a lot of the shortcuts for that sort of thing. So that's why I'm used to how ZModel works. It's more about bringing the palette, figuring out what it is, and continue working. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna merge these things together, merge down. So now, hang on a second. Okay. So I'm just getting a beeping sound. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Now maybe you cannot because of the desktop. Anyway, let's tweak this one a tiny bit more. So I'm going to tag these polygons. the back, and all I want to do is just push it back so that it sort of meets that that edge. Oops. So click, holding shift, that is just to move it like that. Maybe we should just move this instead. So let's do that. Oops. There. That looks better. All right, now we can do some straps, or we can use the ones that come with ZBrush. But before I do that, I'm gonna apply the dynamic subdivision. So geometry, dynamic, apply. So now we have 3 subdivisions that we can work with, and you'll see because we applied it at that level, ZBrush just tweaked the original shape and make it a bit more soft or softer, which is fine. And then we can bring in the move brush, and in this case I would like to use the AccuCurve, still the symmetry on. I'm just gonna give it a bit more of a curvature here, kind of like weight over time, that I don't know, it could be leather or something like that, and it's been deformed over time by the guy wearing it. We're gonna adjust it to the body as well, so it's gonna have a bit of a curvature as well. So I don't want to do too much, just make sure that it feels very organic, not just a cube. But once we put it inside the actual tool that we're working on, we should be able to adapt it a bit better. All right, let's go ahead and see which brushes we can use, or if we have to build our own. We have this IMM clothing hard, which has a bunch of stuff. I think we can use something like this and then use the straps. So let's use the straps first. So curve, strap, snap, this one. Oops. So we have subdivision level. We can freeze subdivision level. I usually prefer to just duplicate and delete lower and just have a dummy version to create those straps. So I'm gonna just give it a simple polygroup, and I'm gonna give 2 straps. Let's see. Yeah, I think that should work. All right. So now the straps go all around it. Oh, let me just show you how I did that. So if you, this is a normal curve brush. If you click and drag and then hold shift and go out towards the canvas, like into the empty space, ZBrush is going to wrap whatever curve you're using all around whatever object. So that's how I use, like that's a technique that I use all the time for, you know, making straps around the arms or, you know, bracelets and that sort of thing. When you have a tubular shape or something like semi-tubular like this bag, and you use this technique, it basically wraps the entire thing around and it connects it. So this is a single piece that is connected already. So it's pretty useful. Now what I'll do is, because this is also an insert mesh ultimately, just in the form of a curve, ZBrush automatically masks the dummy file that we duplicated. So I can split on mask points. We can put that one at the top, just hide it. And now we have these 2 meshes that work nicely, and we can start tweaking this, you know, with the move brush, which is ultimately what I want. Just making sure. Actually, before let's just give it a bit of shape, because it's not accommodating to the silhouette very well. This is just a quick tweak, but then it's obviously very, very thick compared to what I want for the, you know, it should be at least the same thickness as the lid of this bag. So what I'm going to do now is go to solo mode. Actually, before I do that, let's push this out until we roughly get to the edge or the inside of that of this strap. So for instance, this area here, and I'm doing it from this angle so that I can see kind of like this area and the other one, if that makes sense. So I can work on both sides a bit. And you'll see why in a second. All right, I think that's fine. But again, it's very, very thick. So what I'll do is go to Solo, go to the C modeler, right click on an edge, and this time my action would be polygroup. So that way you can just click on this and just create you know, a different polygroup for that. I can do the same thing inside with even a different one. And now it is very easy to just right click, click on Q mesh, and make sure polygroup is selected, polygroup all, click and hold, oops, oh come on, click and hold shift, and then we can push this back in. So this is just moving those polygons. Great. We can go with the move brush and do some more adjustments. All right. Cool. I see some activity in the chat. Let me just see. If we never will see inside, would you recommend to delete the faces inside the bag? It really depends on what you want to do. Like, for me, it doesn't really matter, because unless this is going to go for a game and you're never gonna open the bag, I might not even have the gap. So I would just literally create a very low poly mesh that I can project kind of like the detail of faking that opening, you know. But in this case, it's not gonna be a big deal at all. Plus, it's a very low res mesh at this point, so it doesn't affect much the result. It really depends on what you're trying to do. For in this case, as a concept, it just doesn't really matter, and it just helps to keep an idea of like how the real thing might work, and then hopefully you can make it work or make it look like it's actually something that could function in terms of design. Hey Javier, how's it going? Good to have you here. Awesome. Okay, so for this, what I'll do now, I want to separate a few things, because obviously this doesn't make sense that this is just it's kind of like a rubber band around the back. So I need to split it so that it makes sense. So the next step would be I'm gonna go to Solo. Okay, from this angle, I'm gonna go to Solo, and I'm going to hide these polygons, right? Yeah, I think these ones are fine. So now that I have those pieces hidden, I'm gonna delete those, delete hidden, and now this is obviously not, there's no continuity in the topology. I just broke those, and what I can do now is also mask some of these points and use the move brush to push this back in. We could have done that even before we started the tweaking of the shape, but again, it doesn't matter. All of this is just a part of the blocking, and then you can take your time refining it. There we go. So now this is kind of like attached to the bag in a way, or sewed into it, and these ones are going to be the straps that we can, you know, add the belt, the buckle, or whatever. So let's go into Solo, clear that mask. I'm going to go back to C modeler to fill these gaps. So I'm gonna right click, I'm gonna go to bridge, click on this one, and then on this one. Hang on, no, there we go. And I'll do the same thing for the top. So click on that one, and then on that one, and then right click, select Q mesh. And what I'll do is I'm gonna tag just this one, click and drag, just assign a different polygroup. So I haven't let go of the click after clicking and dragging with the Q mesh, and just pressing Alt. All right, and then I'm gonna mask this, center to the mask areas, and this is gonna be the strap. So I'm just gonna push it down. You can do kind of like a flick, yeah. All right, perfect. So now we need to add some geometry obviously here because this is a straight line. So I'm gonna insert, right click, insert, make sure I have multiple edge loops. Oh, come on. And all right. And that's one more than I wanted, but it's all right. I think it works fine. And then we can either use the move brush or we can use, you know, masking tools. I'm gonna, just to show you something different, I'm gonna use the masking lasso, mask those pieces, and then start pushing them like so. And then we can little by little start masking off or masking in some other areas. We can also rotate certain bits like that. Just so that the thickness is more consistent. So you'll see that those edges are not longer in an angle, but they flow nicely with the rest. One more here. All right, let's do a quick save. And I think that works. Let's go to dynamic, and of course we need to add some geometry on each side. Let's do that right away. So click, oops, click, make sure the insert edge loop. Actually, let me show you something else. So if you want to have a edge loop that goes right in the middle of, you know, these two edges, you can use the multiple edge loops, and that will put an edge right in the middle. So it's going to be consistent on each side. If you don't click and drag, it won't create multiple edge loops, right? So you can just go back to one and let go, and that creates one right in the middle. And then you can use the bevel option, and that way is going to be consistent if you want to do it like that way. All right, I think that's fine. We'll do some further tweaking now that we have this as it is, but we need to move on to the highest subdivision level of all the assets, so that, you know, we have to double check that everything works fine. It's problematic if we don't fill those holes, if we don't bridge it. No, nothing is problematic unless you have a requirement for it. I like to fill them because I like to work with closed geometry. That's all. If you're not gonna see it, you probably don't need it, so you're good. 1 second. All right, so let's go ahead and bring in the buckles. Just gonna use these ones. And this one doesn't have any subdivision level yet, so I'm just gonna click and drag. Hang on, let me do it again. Click and drag, something around there. That works. I'm going to split it. So now this is a individual piece that I can go ahead and actually make it bigger, right? So instead of just going like this and scale it, which doesn't really make sense, I'm going to mask some areas. Let's say something like this, and use the gizmo to push this like so, and then the same thing goes for the other side. Oops, I forgot to mask in maybe this area. There we go. All right, so just make it a little bit wider so it's not the default option either. Maybe even a little bit more. All right. So now let's put it around there. Okay, so now it's just a matter of playing around with the whatever geometry we have, rotating these, try to find the right angle to make it work. I think that one would be fine. Then let's take that one and let's go into dynamic for everything except the back that we already have subdivisions. All right, and what I'll do is with the straps, I'm gonna also apply the dynamic subdivision. There we go. So now we have subdivision level, and I'm gonna tweak it using the highest subdivision level. That's this is maybe an important thing to note. Most of the time, 80%, 90% of the time, I will adjust shapes using the lowest subdivision level or the lowest res that I have, because it's just easier to do proportional changes and manipulate the overall shape a little bit better. But in this case, that I already have the blocking, all I want to do is tweaks to conform to have like a strap or another layer of mesh that goes on top of another to conform to that shape. If I do it in the lowest subdivision form, it might not look good when I go to the highest one. So that's why I wanted to apply the dynamic and put all the elements to the highest subdivision level to go into do those changes. So now I can go into the move brush. I'm gonna turn off the fill color just because it might be a bit distracting. And just this is, you know, a very repetitive and kind of like boring action. To see there's nothing cool at this point, but it's just part of the process of what needs to be done. And I think I need to see how this would work in real life. I think it's fine. Yeah, this one goes in here. Yeah, this one goes here. And that's why it's good to have reference, because you might have an idea of like, yeah, it's a belt. How easy it is to figure out how a belt works. But you know, sometimes it's like your mind can play tricks on yourself. So it's important to collect reference. I do not have reference for this, but this looks kind of right. Like, it looks all right. I'm gonna check. Now I got paranoid about how belt looks. Let's go belt buckle. Oh, see, I knew it. It's the other way around. There was something off about this. Let me just undo a few times. Right, so it's the other way around. Just goes like this, and then we push this one like so. Actually, before I do any of that, see, I'm actually affecting the back area, so I'm gonna mask that. All right, so now I can push this. So and this definitely makes more sense than what I was doing, because the thing that I have in my head is like, yeah, it's a buckle and it's a belt. How hard that could that be? But I knew there was something wrong, because you usually see the entire buckle. You see these two lines, and in my previous design you could only see the center. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it's an interesting new design that something different. But no, let's just keep it more realistic, I guess, and simple. And I'm using a small brush also because I want to add to that effect of organic, like an organic piece. So I'm just changing things, changing the volume quite a bit, and adding imperfections. That's why I'm not moving it with a large brush, although I should. I think we're gonna need some extra loops in there. You know what? We're fine. Just gonna smooth that out. This is such a small asset. I shouldn't be spending that much time in this, but I want to show you the process. Let's go ahead and take these bell buckles, apply the dynamic, and I think we are ready to go. We can, poly paint it, and we haven't done the details or anything, but as a base, this is ready to go. We can, do details later. But I want to move into the goggles. So let's go ahead, and everything is visible that I want. I'm gonna go to merge visible. Here is my asset, combine and have the subdivision levels, all good. So now I'm gonna copy this, go to Toki, and I'm gonna go to the bottom. And what is this? Oh, this should be in the originals. Give me 1 second. I haven't organized this. Okay, and paste. There we go. Here it is. Now, before I do anything, no, let's just leave it as it is. I was just thinking of keeping an original mesh, kind of like before I do. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm gonna duplicate in case I messed up. I'm gonna move this one to the originals, and now I'm gonna use this one. All right, so now I can rotate 90 degrees and adjust the size, maybe not 90 degrees. Something like that. It's definitely too big. I'm gonna have to squish it a bit. But like I said, I'm gonna make it conform to the body a little bit more. So for that, we can use the bend arc or the bend curve. No, the bank arc will be fine. I'm gonna freeze subdivision levels so that we can apply this modifier. Okay, that's cool. So this is just a simple modifier, but it's pretty useful for this sort of stuff. I use it in a lot of things, really. Let's reconstruct. Oops. Yep. I knew this was gonna happen. Let me undo that, because yeah, I want to remove the high subdivision level. Doesn't matter because we haven't done the details. That's why. That's when I want to have like the right shape before I move on. So this one doesn't have any subdivisions, so we won't have any of that, any problem in the projection. There we go. And now, since this is just a low-res mesh, we can go back to dynamic, and it's going to be pretty much the same thing. And we can use the move brush to adjust this. Okay. Now we can take the strap and make it work for, you know, for the asset. So one thing we can do as well, just so that we can work a bit better, is to hold Shift and click on the visibility icon. That will toggle everything, but it's not the same thing as solo mode, because then we can enable the other asset that we're working on, and that would give us a bit more of an indication of what this should be. And you see with the formation and all that, we have some things that are not working great. That is part of the process of adjusting this shape. It's kind of like posing it in a way. So I'm expecting things to break in a way, a little bit, not too much, and it's not a big deal. I'll fix that easier. Okay, so now I can go back to this one, and I'm gonna toggle dynamic off. No, actually, I think I want to make the straps a little bit thicker now that the whole thing is smaller. And so I'm gonna auto group everything, hide everything but the straps, mask them, invert the mask, the selection and the mask, and then just do an inflate tiny bit. And that should tighten things as well. And I want to do the same thing for the buckles. So same deal, just gonna inflate a bit. And now I'm gonna use the move topological brush with AccuCurve. So the move topological is really useful right now because everything is merged into one single tool. So now this one is going to respect the topology. If I get the right piece. And because we also have polygroups, it's going to be probably easier to just isolate. But we have to do this twice since we don't have symmetry anymore. But like I said, it's pretty minor, the tiny tweaks that we have to do. Now I'm gonna enable dynamic and see a bit more of what's wrong in this area. All right. And because I'm just using the masking tools, I don't really need to use the move brush, the move topological. I can use the normal move brush. doing some masking as well. And that's kind of like the beauty of having polygroups. One of the real advantages of having polygroups, that you can do this type of thing, that this type of process really easy, isolate, and it's all about masking and selection ultimately. All right, so I'm gonna apply the dynamic subdivision again. So we're back to 3 subdivision levels, and I can go ahead and do the same thing that I was just doing, but at a high res. So in this high res, I can just push things with more geometry and deform this a bit better. Because before I was just dealing with probably just a single loop around here, and it was just the dynamic subdivision that gives me the effect of, or the illusion of, being a very high res mesh or a subdivided mesh. But now I actually have the geometry to push around. Okay, let's get out of solo. Oops. All right, so this is currently a done deal in terms of the base, so let's just give it another color. Cool. Obviously there's no details, but now we have that little asset that looks kind of cool. All right, let's see the chat if you guys have any questions so far. Comics Legend, sorry, hang on. I think the buckle should orientate upwards. I think the buckle is right now, that based on the reference that I have. Maybe that was beforehand, before I changed it. So Comics Legend, if an art director that mentions that he doesn't want imperfections and wants it all straight, you keep a clean version and then duplicate and make one that has imperfections. Again, it depends on the project and it depends on the asset. If yeah, so that's the reason as well I keep the originals, so I can go back and redo them. For like tiny little things like that, I would use just layers and do the imperfections. And if I'm expecting feedback, to come back and do it. But it's it's kind of like a hard thing to answer, because it really depends on the project as well, and what the workflow is. So if the scenario was what you said, that someone might give me feedback and change things on this specific asset, I would keep it as a straight, like the original that I have here, and just redo the asset, redo the details every time if they're like completely different, because adjusting the shapes and changing the curvature and all that, that's pretty easy, as you saw. So yeah, that's that's kind of like the most straight answer that I can give you based on that question. Thank you for releasing the illustration workshop as a course. No worries. Yeah, so a tentative slog. So he's referring, she, I don't know, is referring to the ZBrush for Illustrators workshop that I just finished. Actually, let me just show you, because it's pretty cool. I should have it around here. And you hopefully, okay, so just in case you see it. So this is an illustration that I did in a 5 days intensive workshop, all done in ZBrush. So in ZBrush and Photoshop. So this is my final illustration. This is how it looks in ZBrush with the matcap gray. This is some examples of the material that we worked on and we developed in the workshop. And this is a kind of like a bit of the breakdown, a process of starting with the sketch, with the idea. The workshop covers everything from, you know, idea generation and planning all the way to compositing. So this is kind of like the one of the sketches that I liked, and then converting that into the scene in 3D. And this is the actual line work that we got out of ZBrush. And then this is the third one. The third thumbnail here is the same artwork, but then refined in Photoshop to add more details and in other bits and pieces. Then this is the blocking of the palette, of the color palette. These are some of the shadows that I end up using, not all of them, but some of them, to enhance the contrast in the final illustration. This is an alternative render pass or outline that is a bit thicker than the original. And this one was just mainly for outlines and other areas, like you see the rock, the difference between the main rock here and this one. This is, you know, that's how I got all of those details, the clown pass and depth pass. And these are some other pretty cool filters. These are Npr filters, so it's just a single click straight render from ZBrush BPR that gives you this result. So these are the type of NPRs that we also developed and worked on during the workshop. But yeah, the students and the attendees were, it was really fun to have that kind of like interaction, and the things that they're working on and they're finishing are pretty incredible anyway. So I think it was a successful workshop. So what Attentive Slow was talking about was that I recorded all those all the workshops, so I'm gonna make it available at some point, hopefully soon, for anyone that is interested in that sort of like workflow. You can go through the entire workshop. I'm gonna share the resources, everything as a mini course, you know, a self-paced course, because obviously that was a live event. So now this, you can watch it. You can watch the recordings at your own pace, but it should work really nicely as a course as well. So I'll let you guys know. But at the moment, I'm in the middle of setting everything up for the opening of the Extra Mile course. I'll give you a sneak preview later. But basically, next in a couple of weeks, I hope, I'm going to be opening the Extra Mile. And if you are part of my newsletter or my email list, I will let you know when it's open. The Extra Mile, for those of you who don't know, is my kind of like my mega course that I have online, teaching you everything from, you know, from ZBrush sculpting and principles and basic concepts all the way to creating an illustration piece. So it's from ZBrush sculpture to polished illustration. That's kind of like the idea of the course. So right now I'm like focusing on that, but once I finish with that, then I can release the illustration course. Hi from Chile. Hola, David. How many hours it takes you to model a character like this? About, you know, 12, 13 years to be able to do it like faster. So a lot of time studying, I guess. All right, I'll come back to the chat, but let's go ahead and work a little bit on the goggles. We have about an hour, so it should be fine. So for the goggles, I think I'm gonna work on, and I have my reference here on the left. I'll show you the reference as well. So this is the sketch that I did. So we've covered this already. So that one is done. Let's see if we can, you know, we can create something to start working on the details later on of these goggles. Yeah, there's gonna be like a weird set of goggles, but we'll see how we go. So for that, I think I'm gonna start as well outside of the main asset. I'm gonna start with a cylinder, make it a polymesh 3D. Maybe too many, but that's all right. I'm gonna take the C modeler, right click, and I'm gonna delete edge loop complete. I'm gonna start with a very clean mesh. And I think something like that. This is gonna be the basis of that goggle. I'm gonna rotate it 90 degrees. And let's go ahead and start, you know, splitting into pieces, adding insertions and that sort of thing. So I'm gonna tag all of these polygons, insert the entire region, and this is kind of like the first border, I guess. So let's go for something like this, and I'm just looking at my reference here that I just showed you. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing in this side. If I want to replicate exactly the same process and I forgot to sort of like do it at the same time, I just need to tag those polygons, make sure, whoops, tag those polygons. Ah, come on. There we go. Tag those polygons, make sure I have the same action, and then just click once. ZBrush will remember the latest action, so they will match perfectly fine. Not that I needed to do that, actually. We just don't do that because you won't see any of that. Or maybe you will. Maybe you will. Let's do it. Yeah, I'm just thinking that you might be able to see the, like, if I make the clear glass for some reason, then you will see the eyes of the character. So we actually need something there. So for that, I'm gonna right click, click Q mesh. I'm gonna tag this with a different or a temporary polygroup. I'm gonna click and hold control, whoops, click control to extract this. I'm gonna tag this once again, and I'm gonna push it back. So now this is an hole. The reason I extracted this one is because I do want this piece to, you know, to create the rest of the asset. So I'm gonna right click, make sure polygroup all is selected, click and drag, and I'm gonna create something like that. And then I might have to add a different polygroup here. There we go. So I'm gonna split these ones so we can work a little bit faster and then merge them back again. So split hidden. Take this one back, and I'm gonna duplicate again. So this one is gonna be kind of like, I don't know, another like a harness or something that sits on top. I don't know exactly what. Let's go ahead and extrude this like so. And there are going to be certain areas that you won't be able to see. So I'm going to tag maybe 2, maybe 3 polygons. And these 2 as well, these 3. Hopefully, I know I'm just mumbling, but I'm trying to figure out the design, and I'll do a recap in a second. Yeah. All right, so basically I just took that circle, extruded those edges, and then selected certain triangles or certain pieces to push them back in. So that ideally is to generate this thing. So whoops, right now what I'm trying to do is this, right? Kind of. So what I'll do is delete this part, and then we have those edges like that. They kind of like the frame of the goggles, and I kind of like that it's not on a straight line, so I'm just gonna leave it like this. I was gonna rotate it, but I think I like it. Let's go ahead and tag all of these ones, right? Click and push them back, and now they're bridged, and we have those kind of like lines in perfect harmony there. All right, so that's another thing. We might have to maybe decrease the size on this one. So click and hold shift. Oops, click and shift. Just decrease it a tiny bit so that there is a gap like so from behind. All right, so that's working fine. We might need to push this one in a bit. And I might want to also add an extra line in here. So let's go to insert, multiple edge loops, one, the same thing for this one, then we can bevel something tiny like this, and then like that, and then we can use the Q mesh just to push them in. All right, so that's just to add an extra level of detail, really, which we can enhance by pushing this in a little bit. Hang on, I'm gonna do it with the mouse because sometimes my pen, when I'm doing this, is a bit weird. Now let's leave it as it is. Can't be bothered. I think it's fine. I was just trying to be too clever. All right. Okay, so the next thing would probably be some kind of let's do the lens actually, and then we do some kind of paths. So append, I'm going to use a sphere. Now in terms of the sphere, that's definitely too high res. I'm going to reconstruct subdivision level. And why is it not allowing me to do that? That's weird. Okay, I'm going to bring in the gizmo, click on polysphere, and that's much better. Just gonna scale it in the z-axis and make sure that it sort of fits what I'm trying to do. Okay, so that's gonna be the lens. I'm gonna go into transparent so that I can flatten this area. Probably that will be an easy way to do it. So I'm gonna use the flatten deformer. Bring them closer like so. That's enough for the lens, except although if it is like a proper lens and I wanted to refract the light and do it properly, I might have just you know what, let's, for the sake of trying to make it more realistic, I'm gonna make it more of a lens. But that's it's gonna be a quite extreme deformation that this lens will provide to this character, but maybe that's what he needs. That's why I like to do this. That's why I like to sort of like design as I'm thinking of the story. Of if I already have the story, it's even better because I can justify this type of stuff, these these exaggerations on the assets to make it fit this story. Okay, so I'm gonna enable dynamic for this. Maybe add one more level of subdivision, so it's pretty clean. I'm gonna do a quick save as well. And actually, I want this to be more rounded. There we go. I'm gonna select this one, also enabling dynamic, but because this is kind of like a hard surface asset, I'm gonna use the Q grid to 1, and then just play with the coverage. Maybe chamfer instead of bevel. Let's see. All right. I'm gonna do the same thing for that one, but this one definitely needs some edge loops. So let's do that first. So insert, single, and replicate the same action inside. There we go. Now dynamic should be better. We can now actually add a couple more like here, and then one more or two more at the back. Perfect. So we have something cleaner. If we want to sharpen these edges on this one, we might just need to click and drag and do this. Yeah, this is what I sometimes struggle with the Wacom pen. For C-Modeler, definitely much easier to go with the mouse. All right. Cool. I think that's working fine. The rest of the details for this type of stuff would be just insert meshes like bolts and that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and add kind of like the padding. How can we approach that? I think the easiest way will be to select and extrude this one, this asset. So I'm gonna actually right click. I have a feeling that it's the same polygroup, so I'm gonna assign a different polygroup first. So let's hide everything that is not this one. New polygroup, and now we can use the Q mesh. Click and hold Control to extract that. Now we can hide it and split hidden. So now we have this piece that also preserves the dynamic subdivision of the original one, which is pretty cool. But what I would like to do in this case is delete those edge loops. So I'm gonna delete that one and that one. So when I do the dynamic subdivision on this piece, when I give it thickness, it's gonna be more rounded, more organic. All right, so click. There we go. So that's gonna be the thickness of that padding. Center that, push that in. All right, and let's go ahead and assign as well a polygroup here to the outer edge. All right, so now we can take this with a Q mesh, click and drag and then hold Shift. And that should be, maybe that's too much. Something like that. That's gonna be the padding. And then we can just apply it or enable dynamic and see maybe we need a bit more of a, needs to be a bit thicker. And we can push this even more. All right. So that's probably the easiest way to go about this padding, and this is something that we can change and make it more organic and deform it a bit better once we put it in the actual character. But that should be, that's fine for now. I'm just gonna add a few more details around this area. So using this kind of like the base of the goggle. So from this angle, maybe I can just, hang on, I'm gonna do it with the mouse. Maybe tag these polygons, click and hold Control just to extract that. Split hidden, and this is really the process that I always follow when I'm working with ZBrush. I create the blocking first, and I use same shapes and same curvatures and same volumes that are very simple, but then I start extracting, merging, bridging between those, and I create these additional details very easily. So that's roughly the idea. Just gonna push this in, holding Shift, and then I'm gonna extract this. Like that. Let's go ahead and mask these points. Hang on. Mask the points, the corners, bring in the gizmo. Just gonna scale this down a bit. And now we can take this whole thing and flatten it. All right, so that's, I'm gonna actually scale it in the Z-axis. So that's one of the details that I have in there as well. And then what I'll do is, oops, clear the mask. Make it thinner. All right. So one thing I can do at this point, let me just undo that and I'll tell you what I did that for. So this is an asset that I might not want to position it where it is right now because it's too straight, and I just want to make something a bit more, slightly more organic, that looks more interesting in the design. So what I like to do is rotate it based, or rotating this based on a specific, like in a specific axis, right? In the center of the entire object, if that makes sense. So if I press the Alt key and click on the house little icon, right, I reset the pivot to the center of the world, which is currently the center of all the rest of the circular or the cylindrical shapes that I've been doing. That's why I haven't moved it from the center of the world. So now I can take this and rotate this piece all around. So that's something that I want to do. However, before I do that, I'm gonna give it a bit more. Well, I'm gonna work on this one a little bit more. So I'm gonna enable dynamic, see what I need in terms of subdivisions. I'm gonna insert one polygon here, another one here, and I'll probably sharpen this slightly more, this. And I wanna actually create some kind of paneling effect. So I'm gonna do another one, and I'm gonna tag these polygons here, and I'm gonna do insert. So inset the full region, a little bit like that, and then use the Q mesh to push that in. Assign a different polygroup just in case, and then we might need to add a few more edge loops. So insert, click and drag, another one there, and let's go ahead and add a few more to sharpen this. There we go. So now I think this one works well, and we can add some bolts or something later as a detail. But now we can reposition this, let's say 45 degrees or maybe 30 degrees, 25 degrees, something like that. Okay, and it's gonna be kind of like in line with the rest of this circular shape. We need to add a couple more things if you wanna, you know, in terms of the design that I was thinking for this. But we can do that in a second or later on. I'm just gonna add something else. Append. I'm gonna use a cube. I'm gonna make that a Q cube, and this is gonna be very simple. And something around there, something that almost goes in line with the top edge of this thing. And let's go ahead and see how we can fix this area. So I reckon the easiest thing would be to just delete these ones, delete these faces. So let's delete that, and then we can use this similar to bridge these pieces, right? So similar to what we've been doing. So nothing out of the ordinary now. One thing I would do before, you'll see that there is an edge loop in the middle. That's a result of the Q cube. So I'm going to delete the edge loop complete, and that will make us that will make our life a lot easier. So now we can bridge this and this, and that's really all I want, because now we can, you know, can mask this area, and we can push it forward. Oops, invert it, push that forward, and that one like so. So it won't interfere with the lens, but we still have this sort of like, you know, strong edge asset in there, and that will obviously be more around there. I'm going to turn on dynamic, and we can adjust the sharpness and all that. Or actually, for this one, we can use the Q grid very easily, because it is a very simple shape. There we go. And what we can do as well is maybe add an edge loop here. You can add there's many ways that you can do the same thing in ZBrush, right? So you can click and drag an edge loop here. The only thing is that ZBrush is going to average the distance between, let's say, this edge at the bottom and this edge at the top, so you don't get a straight line. So if you want a straight line, the easiest thing in this case would be to use the slice curve. So hold Control and Shift, and you can use this slice curve, and you can hold Shift, and it will create an edge loop there. That's it. That's as easy as it gets. I'm gonna do it maybe more like this. I'm gonna mask those points now. Invert the mask. Toggle the fill so that I don't get distracted with that. Bring everything else. Bring in the gizmo center to the unmasked areas with the location icon, and I can just bring these ones closer. All right. So that's pretty cool. I think I'm happy with this, and we can move on to the rest, just to add the straps. We have we have plenty of time, so that's good. And I'll check the chat in a second, so if you have questions, just put them in there, and I'll get to them. One thing I might want to do is apply all the dynamic subdivision. So I'm going to start from the top. So apply dynamic, and I'm going to use the arrows in my keyboard to go through all of them. Whoops, this one is the padding. The padding might need some work, actually. So you know what? Let's undo that. So I'm not applying any of the dynamic subdivision. I'm just gonna merge everything together. So merge visible. So we have a pretty low res, and if I enable dynamic, some of the pieces won't have the same dynamic subdivision that we had in the previous one, because of course some pieces had no Q grid. Some of the pieces had Q grid, so ZBrush doesn't know which one to go for. So it's just going to be a straight, basically back to the original settings of the dynamic subdivision once I merge these things together. It's not too bad, actually. I can actually add a few polygroups or edge loops, and that should give me the result that I'm looking for. So let's just do that. So just a bit more of subdivision in the dynamic subdivision, and then with the C modeler, sorry, I wanna sharpen this. Just sharpen those edges. For this one, I think I might do this, and this is kind of like eyeballing it, but you can be a bit more precise if you wanted to. I think that's it, right? So again, we have something very similar to what we had. I might want a more straight angle here, so I'm gonna add a couple more. Oops. This is just to sharpen this angle here. Perfect. So now this is a dynamic subdivision. I can apply it or not, but I can go ahead and copy it. Go to key here, and I can go ahead and paste that. Let's do a quick save just in case. And now we can take this mesh. I'm gonna scale it down and do the same, do the usual thing. So duplicate, push it into the originals, and then use that one, the duplicate basically, to position it. So first of all, I just want to get the size right. Maybe go into transparent mode, so it's easier. All right, and of course this needs some rotation. Not too much, but that's why I wanted to do the padding afterwards. All right. I think that works, and we can go ahead and mirror and well. Whoops, I have local symmetry enabled, so let's disable local symmetry and mirror and well, and it will preserve the dynamic subdivision. So now we have those goggles. They work kind of fine, but this gap is what I want to fill with that sort of like padding. I'll show you what I mean. So in this area that you clearly see the corner of the eye, that's where I want to put this sort of padding, and then we'll add the rest of the details and the straps, but roughly that's what we're doing. All right. Before I move forward, actually, I'm going to let's see. I'm just thinking that I might wanna auto group everything, and I just wanna have the same polygroups here and here. So that's gonna be the same group. And I might want to actually apply the subdivision level. So let's apply it. Yep, that's good. And now I have more subdivision levels to go ahead and use the move brush to push this and adjust it to the shape. So I'm gonna do that first, actually. There, with symmetry and without the AccuCurve, so it doesn't create spikes or anything. It's just purely to push that sort of padding and make it conform around the face of this character. And this is where things start to look a little bit more organic when we start pushing this and changing the how much pressure these things, or how much how pressed they are against the face and that sort of thing. Because there we go. So we have to tweak things like that insertion there. But that's all with the smooth brush and the move brush. And this is the type of details that would make it look a bit more realistic in terms of how all the pieces are integrated together. Just because if these things actually put pressure against the face of this character, that's what you would expect this to deform, or how it would or should deform, really. Okay, a bit of a smooth brush, and this one there's a lot of deformation here, so we can actually push things towards the character's face a bit more before we add the padding. But you see now that this padding, it's a good contrast between a more organic piece within the same subtool, a more organic piece with the other. There's a contrast between that organic piece and the hard surface. All right, so there we go. Let's go ahead and do the padding. Let's do a quick save as well. And actually, let's check the chat. Is all the color done in Photoshop? Oh, I think you were asking about the illustration. Yeah, all the color is done in Photoshop, but using ZBrush techniques in a way to control that or to mask it, and it's not just like filling in Photoshop with colors. Is utilizing the ZBrush techniques that I taught in the workshop to speed up the workflow and create variations in a non-destructive workflow as well for the coloring. Absent Chile. Hola Pablo, ¿dónde eres? Yo soy de Colombia, pero vivo en Melbourne hace 10, 11 años en Australia. So clicking and dragging does not extrude, but just changing its size when using QMesh. No, it extrudes, but if you hold Shift, it will just move the polygons along the normals. So with the QMesh selected, you have QMesh stands for Quick Mesh, so to quickly generate stuff using that tool. So you have 3 actions in the same tool or in the same feature using the modifiers. So the normal click, and if you just click and drag, a left click and drag a polygon is going to extrude that. If you click and drag and then you hold Shift, it's going to move it along the normal. And if you click and drag and hold Control, you will extract it. So those are the different actions that I've been using. Hello Paul, are you going to leave it as a dynamic subdivision, or are you going to divide it later in Sculpt? Okay, I think that answers your question. I applied the dynamic subdivision. I usually use the dynamic to get an idea of of how things are going to look when I subdivide, and if I wanna tweak things before I apply it. So dynamic subdivision is really useful for things like the strap, for example. I currently have dynamic on, but it's a very simple and low mesh or low poly mesh. So I will apply it later on, but at this point it's pretty easy because I can see the smoothness of it and how it would look if I subdivide it, but I can manipulate the very low res, which if you apply the dynamic, you can still go back into the lower subdivision and do it. It's just that certain things like extruding or inserting meshes and that sort of thing, you'll have to free subdivision level, and it just might be a more cumbersome process. So if you keep it as subdivision, if you keep the dynamic on for a long time until you're happy with the result, like I am right now with the base of the goggles, then you can do that after. You can do the insert meshes, you can do most of the process that won't work when you have subdivision level. I guess that's my point. All right. Cool, so let's go ahead and do the padding. So for the padding, I might just dynamesh a piece and then move it. Yeah, let's do a different workflow. So I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate these entire goggles. I'm gonna delete lower. I'm gonna hide everything but these pieces. Actually, let's use these ones. Delete hidden. So now this is just a normal mesh, well, without anything weird. But what I'll do is I'm also going to hide part of it. I think that should be fine. And I'm gonna delete that as well. So now this is just an empty piece, and I'm gonna dynamesh that, maybe a high resolution, maybe higher than that, there. And I'm just gonna smooth this, give it a single polygroup, dynamesh. So this is just a dynamesh object that I can retopologize in a second using the series measure. I'm gonna inflate this so that we can manipulate it a bit easier. Redynamesh, and let's go ahead and use the move brush with AccuCurve to get a more pointy effect, and I'm just gonna cover those areas. So that padding is maybe too much in here. And I know I'm covering a lot of kind of like volumes at the moment. A lot of the volumes are intersecting, but I just want to get the overall shape. Maybe kind of like in line with the with the head of the character, and that might suggest, in terms of the I don't know, the story or the development of this character, the design of it, it might suggest that it is a custom-made goggle, obviously, that would fit this character perfectly. Maybe he put it together, maybe he hired someone to do it for him. So that's fine, something like that. Okay, now like I said, there's a lot of intersection and problems here, but I'm gonna show you what I'm trying to do. It's easier if I just show you than talking about it. So all I want to do now at this point is create that volume that covers what I want to cover, but it's just a Dynamesh, nothing too fancy. But then what I'll do is I will generate the geometry as a single-sided polygon that allows me to manipulate it a little bit easier, and then I can extrude it to generate the thickness and all consistent all around. So that's the idea. So let's go ahead and do that. So now that I have the base, I can approach this in many different ways. I guess the easiest thing for me in this case would be to just isolate polygroups. So I'm going to use this select lasso, and I'm going to hide these ones. So something like that. Let's go ahead and assign a polygroup. So now we have two different polygroups, but you see all these jagged edge around here, and we want something that's like there's like a straight line so that we can produce a clean edge around there, or we can let ZBrush know that we want a straight line there with a series measure. So I'm going to use the polish by groups slider that you can find under the deformation palette. Let's just do it again from here. So deformation palette, polish by groups, that should polish the difference between polygroups. So you'll see we have a straight line now. I'm going to do it a couple more times. There we go. So now we have a straight line in there, and we can go to the geometry, go to series measure. Here we go. I'm going to leave adapt on, and I'm going to target half of the polygons that I have right now, and I want to keep groups, and that's how ZBrush will understand that we want to keep that difference between the groups and actually keep the groups when it does the series measure. The smoothing of the groups is basically what I just did manually with this slider. So I'm going to set this to 0. If you don't want to do it manually, you can just leave it at 1 and it should work the same. Let's click on series measure. That's not too bad. Let's go ahead and do it again. I still have the half enabled. One more time. And that's not too bad. One more time. One more time. Alright, so I think maybe this one was a good option. Let's do it a couple more times. Yeah, no, I think this one actually is fine, and it's enough resolution for what I want. Perfect. So now that I have a better topology, all I need to do is use the smooth brush to smooth things out a bit. We'll have to go back and refine the shape again. Just want to smooth things out, especially around the border. And I'm really only paying attention to the pink or purple polygroup, because that's the one that we want to keep. Alright, so now Control and Shift. Oops, make sure the select rectangle is enabled. Now I'm going to delete hidden. And like I say, now we have a single-sided polygon, but at a low res, and it's pretty useful. Let's see if we can get something a bit better. Maybe with the legacy option. I think I'm happy with this, honestly. I was just trying to, again, complicate things a bit more. I'm happy with this, so we're going to move forward with that. So now, if we go back, we have the same shape, the same volume that we defined before, but now we have a single-sided polygon, so that's going to be a lot easier to just try to, make it conform to this area. So that's what I'm going to do. Just start pushing things, and you won't be able to see much of it. but I want to make sure it is not covering the other padding or the cushion, so that is comfortable. Speaking of which, I bought recently my first ever proper headphones, like, as in, I've had a lot of headphones in the past, but I bought the Sony XM3, the ones that the noise cancelling. Oh man, that's another level. It's really cool. And they're really comfortable. That's what I was getting at. So I want to try to do something similar for this guy. They feel as comfortable. All right, so you'll see it's a lot easier to manipulate, you know, a I forgot the word, single-sided mesh. And even with the smooth brush and all that. All right, so let's double check that it doesn't intersect with the actual lens. All right, I think I'm happy with this. But now that we have that, and it's a separate mesh and everything, we can go ahead and bring in the C modeler again. Right click, make sure Q mesh selected, polygroup all, and we can actually, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna push this one in. So click and drag. Oh, come on, I'm gonna do it again with the mouse. Click and drag. Oh, this is too thin. If you get this error, or not an error, if you get this, that is sort of like snapping in some areas, that is because there is some curvature and ZBrush thinks that you want to merge them or bridge them together. So in that case, when you have a little bit of a curvature there, you can use the extrude. That should work a little bit easier. Polygroup all. There. I don't want too much padding, something like that. Right? And then we can go back to the move brush, maybe with a smooth brush and low intensity, just to refine these areas. Because again, this is going to be very organic. I don't want this to be have a hard edge or anything. Before I do that, actually, forgot to mention something. Let's undo all that. All right. In this case, if I use the extrude, let's go back to C modeler. If I use the extrude, it's not going to create that that other side, right? So it might be just easier to keep using the Q mesh, right? But extrude it this way, or the other way, which is probably going to be easy in this particular case, is to just use the gizmo. So I'm going to center it. Let's see if that works actually, and hold Control. Nope. Whoops, I haven't deleted this, so that's why. That's the error actually. So let's delete hidden. All right, let's try it one more time with the previous idea of the Q mesh. Should work fine now. Yeah. Sometimes this is the type of things that you encounter and you go like, what's going on? And then you might think, oh, I need to reset ZBrush, but it's just a user error. So I'm gonna go back and click and keep it simple, just the Q mesh. So now we have thickness, right? We have some weird looking things here, but we're gonna fix that in just a second. The only thing that I want to mention is that because we worked on, let's say, the most outer surface of this padding, and then we just extruded that in, the normals are actually inverted, but you won't see them because I have double enable. So if I go to display properties and I toggle this double off, you'll see the normals are embedded. So I just need to make sure that I double check when I do these actions. I double check the normals, and I just need to flip them, and now they're working fine. All right, cool. So one more thing, now that we have the flipped normals, we can use the move brush and use the smooth brush as well to soften those borders. And that creates the a better padding. Perfect. And we also preserve the polygroups, so if we need them, we can use them later. So that's the padding done for this area. We might have to tweak a few things later on once we work on the face a bit longer, because it might change. I don't know. Like I said, the face is not set in stone either. We might change it. All right, cool. How are we with time? So we have about 15 minutes. So we want to add one more detail. So this is going to be, we're going to add dynamic subdivision in a second, but for this I want to add kind of like an extra tube that goes all around, and that's just a tiny little detail that could unify certain seamlessly different elements. And what I mean by that is, if I for example take this padding and add a series of lines, just the sculpting lines, similar to what I have in the shoulder pad. If I just add a tiny tube that goes all around like an edge, it's going to be very similar to that tube that we create for the shoulder pad as well. So although they're very different assets and might not be related in the context of this character design, just by adding that tiny little detail, you sort of feel that it's part of the same, that it has a consistent visual language in a way, so that they all share like detail like that. So I want to do that, and that's another reason why I went for this type of design for the goggles, just to match a little bit the thing that we have already here for this box, or this controller box, or whatever this is. So if I'm gonna select this, and all I have to do now is go to stroke palette, and in the stroke palette I'm gonna click on frame mesh, but I'm gonna only select the polygroups. So frame mesh. So now we should have two lines, and then we can go to the curve. Where are we? Curve tube, and with a very small brush size, just click once, and we have that padding there. That's it. We can actually maybe increase the size a bit. That's too much. Let's go 4. Yeah, I think 4 is fine. So we have that little padding there, and we can now enable dynamic subdivision to see how this thing looks. A little bit smoother, and it's looking pretty good. All right, so again, these ones are ready. We just need to do the straps, but we won't have time for today. So I'll just check the chat if you guys have any questions. I'm happy to answer those in the last 10 minutes. Otherwise, I'm gonna wrap it up here. And what I'll do is I'm just gonna assign the colors so that I know where I'm at for the next time that we continue working on this guy. So now the blue polygroup, we know that they are ready to start detailing. They have already a decent base mesh. It's just a matter of adding details, sculpted details. So that's something that I might just cover outside of the ZBrush Live session. But hopefully next time we will finish by fixing the clothes and the head actually. But other than that, I think it's coming along nicely. So let's do a quick save again. And I'm just gonna turn off polyframe to do a quick render. 0.75. before as well. Oh, actually, let's put everything to the highest subdivision level so that we see actually where we are at in terms of details and all that. Perfect. All right, so that's how this guy is looking. I'm gonna do it again here because I forgot that you guys have the camera and the chat. Alrighty. So it looks cool with just one Google. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think that the asymmetry would be added with other details and maybe some asset that he's having. Can you retopologize that 5 triangle thing? Not sure what the 5 triangle thing is that you're referring to. What are the quick keys you use mostly? I have a custom set of keys. Again, it's whatever works for your workflow. So I have 2 which are Alt Q and Alt A, and I have them mapped to my controller. So I use this Wacom controller a lot, so that I don't have to rely on the keyboard. So basically, I map those 2 to these ones. So the ones on the corner. These 2, I have Alt Q and Alt A, and what they do is they bring this palette, which is all about editing mesh, paneling, deforming the mesh, texture, or the other one brings in anything related to the brush. So I have some custom default brushes, some custom brushes. I can edit the brush from this point as well, and all of these are custom macros. So MVP on and MVP off means masked by polygroup. MVP is masked by polygroup on or off. Minimum connected points, this one relates to the smooth brush, that sort of thing. So I don't have a set of quick keys that I use a lot. I just have everything that comes by default in ZBrush. I just tweaked it so that I have macros that work a little bit faster for me and that I can use them within these 2 palettes. So I can do most of my actions within those 2 palettes, which are 2 keys in the remote. And they're just right next to the Alt key. So the one in the middle is my Alt key, so that I can move things around. That's really what it is. Cool. All right. So I think I'm gonna leave it here, guys. And thank you so much for joining. And again, if you are interested in the ZBrush for Illustrators workshop, I'm going to turn it into a mini course, and that should be available relatively soon. Right now, I'm more focused on my biggest course, which is the extra mile. And the extra mile would be opening for enrollment publicly in hopefully next week. I will see. If you're part of the list, you'll get an invitation as well. And some of the work that the guys are doing at the extra mile is just fantastic. So I'm really excited to see who joins next. Alrighty, so I'm gonna leave it here, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I will see you next week, same time, same day, and we'll hopefully maybe get into the retopologize aspect of the head, projecting details, do the same thing with the clothes, and get this guy closer to a final look that we can render outside. Other than this, I was gonna, so one more thing I was gonna mention. If you go to the 3D Concept Artist website, there is a new blog post that is super cool that you guys should check it out. But anyway, I'll leave it there. And if you're interested, I just want to create a bit of suspense. So if you go there, it's gonna be pretty cool. Anyway, guys, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.